Hi, welcome to Crime Clueless. We're your hosts. I'm Jenna.
I'm Lara.
I'm Krista.
And I'm Kayla.
You guys, today I have an Arizona case for you.
Ooh.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's good or bad. Are we going to be scared now?
Depends on if it's solved or not.
I guess.
I don't know how you'll feel. We'll see.
We'll see at the end.
Nice spoilers.
It's not a spoiler. I didn't tell you how you would feel.
It's going to be a surprise, Keela.
Exactly.
Okay.
Surprise feelings.
Yeah.
I don't like those.
She wants written out feelings, okay?
Correct. Thank you.
Right. Tell her how she's going to feel at the end.
Yes, please and thank you.
All right. Maybe next week. All right. We'll jump right in then. A lone figure moves through the Arizona wilderness under the cover of night. Footsteps crunch on dry leaves. He pauses, chest heaving, glancing over his shoulder. In the distance, faint sirens wail. He's been running for hours, hiding in the shadows. Every snap of a twig could mean they found him. But for now, under the moonlight, he's just another drifter slipping away into the vast desert. Who is this man on the run? Well, let's unpack how a seemingly ordinary Scottsdale dad became the subject of a nationwide manhunt. But first, let's set the stage with the man himself, or at least the man everyone thought Robert Fisher was. On the surface, Robert Fisher was Mr. Average Suburbia, a 40-year-old husband, father of two, a former firefighter, a devoted churchgoer. Basically, picture the guy next door who waves hello, mows his lawn on Saturdays, takes his kids fishing on the weekends. In fact, Robert was heavily involved at the Scottsdale Baptist Church men's ministry, and neighbors saw a polite, helpful family man. Keyword, saw. Detective John Kirkham of the Scottsdale Police said Robert was a very private person. Outwardly, he was perceived as a good father, a good husband, a church-going man. During the investigation, we found that Robert had a number of faces, a number of masks that he wore. So, behind the all-American dad mask, who was Robert really? According to friends, family, and a 400-page police report.
400 pages?
Yes.
Wow.
400 pages of insight into this guy's life.
Wow.
He was controlling, volatile, and obsessed with not losing his family. He grew up in a troubled home himself. Born in 1961, his parents divorced when he was 15. It was an ugly split that left Robert bitter and traumatized. He told co-workers that his life would have been different if his mother hadn't left, and he vowed to never let his own marriage fail. According to his sister, he would not be divorced like his parents were. Robert stated that several times. Divorce.
Doesn't sound good.
No, because you're not the one always in control of that.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Divorce, in Robert's mind, was the ultimate disgrace, something only other people went through, not him. So, Robert married Mary Cooper in 1987. Mary was 38 in 2001, known as a sweet, patient woman, and together they had two children. They had 12-year-old Brittney and 10-year-old Bobby Jr. By all accounts, Mary was a loving mother. She worked part-time at a medical clinic and even took a job at one point that she told friends was a security fund, hinting she might need her own money if things went south. Smart woman, as it turns out. Brittney was outgoing and bright. Bobby was a bit more shy, a boy who preferred video games over hunting trips, much to his dad's disappointment. Life in the Fisher household behind closed doors could be tense. Robert was described as a cruel, controlling, violence-prone loner by those who knew him. This guy had rules for everything. He wouldn't allow Mary to decorate the home as she liked. The walls had to stay white, and almost no family pictures could be hung. When Mary's mother lovingly made them quilts, Mary had to stash them away. Robert would sneer and say, "Isn't it time you got rid of this stuff?" I guess in Robert's world, cozy handmade quilts clashed with his delicate aesthetic. He even once turned a garden hose on Mary for speaking out of turn. Yes,
Jeez.
right? Spraying her like she's an unruly dog. Real charmer. He also tried to impose his macho hobbies on his family. He was an avid outdoorsman, hunting, fishing, and he expected his wife and kids to fall in line with these interests. A friend recalled a particularly lovely day when Robert tried to teach the kids to swim by throwing them off a boat. The children, understandably, were screaming and crying.
Seems safe.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Robert hauled them back in and smirked. Now there, how's that? Nothing like a little attempted drowning to build character, Dad.
And make them terrified of it for the rest of their lives. No big
Mhm.
deal. Yeah.
He was embarrassed that young Bobby didn't like hunting and fishing, as if a 10-year-old preferring Pokemon over gutting deer was a personal affront to his manhood. Neighbors heard the fights between Robert and Mary constantly. One former neighbor, named Wade, said they did not have a happy marriage. They screamed constantly. Everybody heard it. You always heard his wife screaming things like, "You're worthless. I could have done better than you. We should get a divorce." That's right. Mary, who by many accounts was a kind, gentle person, was brought to her breaking point where she'd be yelling that he was worthless and threatening divorce. Imagine the level of frustration and despair that must have taken after years with this guy.
Oh, that's so sad.
It's so sad.
Especially like the neighbors who have heard that. Seems like maybe there should have been some intervention, but you probably don't want to get involved.
Well, even like
That's
a
gotta be
police
hard to
call.
hear.
Like a
Yeah.
police call for a domestic disturbance or something.
At least to put it on someone's radar.
Yeah. Or CPS or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Robert also had a one-night affair with a sex worker in 2000, which he later confessed to some coworkers. He only fessed up because he got a urinary tract infection and was terrified Mary would find out it came from his cheating. When Mary did learn of the affair roughly 2 years before what we're about to talk about, she was devastated. She kicked Robert out of the house, finally standing up for herself, and told him the marriage was over. Robert, true to form, could not handle it. He begged his way back. The Fishers went to their church pastor for counseling. Their pastor later recalled giving them the standard marriage advice: how to forgive and move forward. At church, Robert presented himself as the repentant husband working on fixing his mistakes. Mary, perhaps for the sake of the children or due to her faith, agreed to reconcile, but things were never really okay after that. Their pastor said he had had difficulty with his parents and the divorce they had gone through. He had told me he'd never go through that again. So here's Robert's mindset. Divorce is unacceptable. He'd rather die or make others die than face that shame. By early 2001, Mary had quietly begun telling friends she was planning to leave him for good. She even started to stash money and talked about that security fund job. She was done with his controlling behavior and constant tension. This was a powder keg situation just waiting for a spark. And a spark did come. In fact, an explosion. In the first week of April 2001, something was definitely off in the Fisher household. Mary had an injured hand around that time and seemed anxious. Friends later said Mary acted weird and on edge in the days leading up to the tragedy. 6 days before, Robert even showed up unexpectedly at their church one evening, apparently looking for Mary and the kids in a panic. People who saw Mary then said she seemed afraid of him. It's as if Robert sensed Mary was slipping away from his control and he desperately stalked her.
Ugh, that's so sad.
It's really sad. One day, just 36 hours before the tragedy, Mary confided in a close friend from church, Beth. It was Sunday, April 8th, 2001. Beth found Mary standing alone on a balcony at church, visibly upset. Beth had said, "Mary, you don't look okay. How's your week?" Mary replied, "Not very good." Beth said, "Oh my gosh, are you sick or what's going on?" And Mary, whispering, said, I just can't do this anymore. I can't do this with Robert. I'm going to end it. I don't care what I have to do to get out, but I am done. I'm done.
Ugh.
Beth was surprised but comforting, said, I'm sorry. I'll say a prayer for you. And Beth reached out and squeezed Mary's arm supportively. That was Mary essentially declaring that she was going to divorce Robert no matter what it took. Beth was taken aback. She knew the marriage was rocky, but this was the most resolute she'd ever seen Mary about leaving. Beth promised to pray for her friend, perhaps not realizing how urgently Mary needed help beyond prayers. The very next night, Monday, April 9th, Mary attended a church event with her kids. Beth saw her around 9:30 p.m. and asked how she was holding up after their talk. Mary just gave a little hanging in there shrug and mentioned that she couldn't talk, likely because 10-year-old Bobby was nearby. That was the last time anybody outside the family saw Mary alive.
Oh.
At around 10 p.m. that night, back at the Fisher home in a quiet Scottsdale cul-de-sac, neighbors heard the sounds of a furious argument echoing from the house. This wasn't unusual for that neighborhood. The Fishers fought loudly and often, but this one sounded bad. One neighbor later reported hearing a woman's voice yelling and a man's voice responding shortly before 10 p.m. We don't know exactly what was said in that final fight, but given everything, it likely involved Mary confronting Robert, possibly about his affair, or telling him that she wanted a divorce. Maybe Robert was accusing Mary of trying to take the kids. Maybe Mary shouted that she'd had enough of his controlling nonsense. The tension that had been building for years was about to snap. Sometime between 9:30 p.m. and 10:15 p.m. on April 9th, investigators believe that Robert Fisher brutally murdered his family.
So sad.
Mm-hmm.
It's really sad. The autopsy later revealed the horrifying details. 38-year-old Mary was shot in the back of the head and her throat had been slit. 12-year-old Brittney and 10-year-old Bobby had their throats slashed from ear to ear.
Oh, that's awful.
It's horrifying. I don't understand how that's better than divorce. I just don't understand.
It's not.
Well, and these are like the people who are saying, well, why didn't she leave before?
Right.
Well, she really couldn't. She
No.
tried. She wanted to. She wanted to get away, but she couldn't.
And she probably knew his feelings on divorce and was scared.
Yeah.
Well, and especially it sounds like she had potentially been planning because, she did have that emergency fund.
Mm-hmm.
So, she was trying.
She was, yeah. The children likely, hopefully, never even woke up. They were found in their beds, positioned as if sleeping. In fact, firefighters later noted the bodies didn't have the defensive burn postures typical of fire victims.
It's awful. Mm-hmm.
They hadn't been moved at all as a fire consumed the house. It appears that Robert crept into his children's rooms, killed them while they slept, then did the same to Mary, perhaps after a struggle, and then also shooting her. It's beyond horrific. It's personal, rage-filled, just a horrifying
So
kind of
tragic.
killing. Yep. He nearly decapitated his own children.
Ugh.
Detective later said, bluntly confirming the carnage. Let that sink in for a minute. This was not an accident, not a crime of passion that got out of hand in a split second. This was a calculated annihilation of the people he was supposed to love the most, all because he couldn't stand the idea of divorce. If there's a worse take my ball and go home response than this, I haven't heard it. Around 8:42 a.m. on April 10th, so the next morning, the quiet Scottsdale neighborhood was rocked by a massive explosion. Neighbors thought a bomb had gone off or an earthquake hit. In reality, it was the Fisher house erupting into flames. A fireball blew out of the front brick wall and shook houses half a mile away.
Wow.
Yeah.
The blaze shot 20 feet high, and secondary explosions from either ammunition or paint cans inside kept going off, making it feel like an incredibly dangerous inferno. Panicked neighbors rushed out with garden hoses. trying desperately to keep the fire from spreading to their homes. This scene was chaos, black smoke billowing, flames roaring, people shouting. One neighbor, still in pajamas, ran out with a hose and started dousing the edge of the fire until the firefighters arrived. It looked like a scene from a war zone. Firefighters arrived within minutes to find the house already mostly collapsed and engulfed. As they battled the blaze, they had no idea what or who was inside. Then came the grim discovery. When the fire was finally tamped down enough, responders found the body of Mary, Brittney, and Bobby in what remained of their beds. At first, given the destruction, it seemed they may have died in the fire, but Scottsdale detectives on scene noticed things were off. The bodies, as mentioned, were laying too peacefully, and there were clear signs of foul play: an odor of accelerant, a disconnected gas line, a candle oddly placed in the house. Investigators quickly pieced together that this was no accidental gas leak. It was a staged explosion to cover a triple homicide. By the afternoon of April 10th, after the fire was out and the smoke cleared, Scottsdale police had a pretty shocking scenario on their hands. Someone had slit the throats of a mother and 2 kids, shot the mom in the head, then rigged the house to blow up hours later. And that someone was missing. When police tried to account for the family, they noted that the father, Robert, was nowhere to be found. At first, maybe they wondered, could he have been another victim, somehow ejected by the explosion or incinerated completely? It didn't take long for suspicion to turn to Robert as the perpetrator. The evidence at the scene pointed to an elaborate attempt to destroy evidence and mislead investigators. The gas line to the home's furnace had been intentionally pulled out. A candle had been lit in the house, presumably to ignite the accumulating gas after a delay, a kind of homemade time bomb. Fire experts determined it took about 10 hours for enough gas to build up and reach the candle flame.
Oh, wow.
Meaning
10 hours?
10 hours. Meaning the fire was set to blow long after the killer had fled. This gave whoever did it a huge head start. Detective Heselman later explained Robert's likely thinking. I think blowing up the house was purely a delay tactic, a discovery tactic. He knew the bodies were going to be found. Maybe in his thought, if the entire house is incinerated, maybe it's believed that he perished in the fire along with his family.
Or maybe it would cover up what he did.
Yeah.
They couldn't tell that he had cut their throats.
Right.
Yeah.
Cover up the wounds.
When did the house explode? Was it like at night?
It was 8 a.m. the next morning,
Okay.
and they had heard them fighting around 10 p.m. the night before.
Okay.
So that had to have been, 10 hours. That
Yeah.
would be 10 p.m. the night before.
Yeah, I think it was
Wow.
like 8:42.
Yeah.
And they think it was right around 10. So,
I was
Yeah.
wondering if he had done it like early morning to have it, or like, I guess that would probably put it in the middle of the day, 10 hours.
yeah, he just
If they were
wanted,
sleeping,
he
it
wanted
had to been
time.
overnight. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep. The detective wondered if maybe it was purely for evidence eradication. In other words, Robert tried to make it look like he died in the accidental gas explosion too, so police wouldn't immediately chase him. It was a cunning plan, evil, but cunning. And for a short time that morning, it might have worked on some people. There was confusion at first. Was Robert one of the victims? Did the whole family tragically die in a gas leak? But as soon as the autopsies came back with throats slashed and for his wife having been shot, it was crystal clear this was a murder scene. The only person unaccounted for was Robert. A very suspicious ATM security video soon surfaced as well. It turned out that at 10:43 p.m. on April 9th, so that was the Monday night, roughly an hour after neighbors heard that big fight, Robert was caught on camera withdrawing $280 from an ATM. In the grainy footage, you see Robert's face, calm as ever, and guess what's in the background? Mary's Toyota 4Runner. He was using his wife's car and her ATM card to grab cash. That's essentially the last confirmed sighting of Robert Fisher, a blurry ATM video time-stamped the night of the murders, showing him alone, pocketing some getaway money. The fact that he took 280, not around 300 for instance, made some speculate maybe that he emptied the account, or was that the max daily limit? In any case, he wanted some cash on hand. After that, Robert vanished into the night. When Robert didn't show up among the dead and didn't surface in the hours and days after, police officially named him the one and only suspect. On April 14th, 2001, just 4 days post-explosion, an arrest warrant was issued for Robert William Fisher. The state of Arizona charged him in absentia with 3 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of arson. The manhunt was on, and it was intense. For 10 days, there was no sign of Robert or the family's missing SUV. Investigators had APBs out nationwide for Robert's distinctive 1999 Toyota 4Runner and for Robert himself. Then, on April 20th, 2001, a break. The 4Runner was discovered in a remote area of the Tonto National Forest near the towns of Young and Payson, which is about 100 miles north of Scottsdale. It was parked off a dirt road in the deep woods. Campers in the area stumbled upon it and alerted authorities. Near the SUV, police found one of the very few clues Robert left behind: his wife's dog, Blue. Blue was a 2-year-old Queensland Heeler, which is an Australian cattle dog, and absolutely beloved by the family. In fact, many say Robert loved the dog more than just about anything. Blue was found under the vehicle, alive, but hungry, agitated, and he had porcupine quills stuck in his snout.
Yeah.
Poor guy.
Poor,
That goes to show. I mean, he killed his entire family.
Saved
Took
the
the
family
dog.
dog.
Yeah.
he's a monster.
I thought you were going to say shows that he loved the dog
That's
more
what I
than
was
his whole
meaning.
family.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, he loved the
he
dog
loved
more
the
than
dog
them.
more than his family, yes.
I'm glad you didn't say the dog was dead.
I know, me too.
Like, we can't take anymore.
I know. Oh, it's so awful.
Awful.
That would be-
Kayla would be crying.
I would be crying.
Mhm. Yeah.
I'm already pretty sad that he was just like under the
I know, me too.
car by himself. Yeah.
I know, poor guy.
Like, at least he's alive.
Yeah.
He had apparently tried tangoing with the porcupine, though. And pro tip, porcupines always win.
Yeah.
The dog had been left to fend for himself. He stayed near the truck like a loyal friend waiting for
Aw.
Robert to come back, and even took shelter under it.
That makes me so sad.
I know.
I was thinking it just takes such a sick person to, one, kill your whole family, and then also just take your dog and just leave them. I don't know how
Mhm.
you could do any of those things. It's evil. It's not
It is.
something, I don't know, that any like normal person could fathom doing.
No, just get divorced. Like,
Yes. At least you could still
Drives me
see your
crazy.
kids and
Yes.
stuff. I don't know.
and
That's
just because
terrible.
that was your experience doesn't mean it will be
Their
Vow to
experience.
change it.
exactly.
Yeah, vow to not be like what your parents were. I don't know.
And I don't know, don't cheat on your wife.
Yeah, that too. Or be so controlling. She feels like she has to leave.
Yeah. Like if you're so against divorce, do something to make your
Yeah.
marriage better.
So horrible. It makes me feel so bad for the kids because
Mhm.
none of this is their fault.
No.
They're not part of the fight, the things that
No.
are going on between him and his wife. It's not their fault.
And it seems like he had a personality disorder of some type and,
Probably.
likely needed that control. So when he felt like he was losing control of the wife and his
Mhm.
kids, I'm sure he couldn't handle that.
Oh,
Mhm.
yeah.
Well, along with that, too, it seems like he had an idea of what he wanted his life and his kids to be. And you were saying his kids didn't have the same interests that he did, and that made him upset. And
Yeah.
so maybe he just felt like this isn't what I pictured,
Mhm.
which is so horrible,
Yeah.
Yes.
Just
Yep.
wanted to start over.
I
Yeah.
guess. Awful.
Yes, I agree.
Can't imagine just not loving your kids for who they are.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? If they don't have the same interests as you keep your interests and then you try to find something in common with them. Maybe you'll find something else you like.
Maybe learn about what they like.
Learn about what they like. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Take an interest in Pokemon.
Yeah.
Anybody can learn it.
Anybody can.
Yep.
I know way more about Pokemon than I ever did growing up.
Yeah, exactly. Same.
I have more Pokemon cards than I've ever seen.
Yep.
How it is.
Mm-hmm.
You just do. You love your kids.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
They're each their own individual person. They're not copies of you.
They're not supposed to be.
Nope.
That'd be a pretty boring world if
Yeah.
everyone was
Copies
just
of each other.
Yeah.
I mean, look how different all four of us are.
I know. Yeah.
Besides
And that's the
our
thing
voices.
too.
I know. It's when we
Some
say
of our
the exact same thing
responses.
at the same pitch at the same
Yeah.
time. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess we have some things in common. All right. The discovery of Blue raised more questions than answers. Him being there was huge in terms of interpreting what happened. The detective later said that's been the topic of most conversation. Why was the dog still there? If Robert completed suicide, if he walked off into the woods to die, the dog would have been there with him. So clearly, he must have gotten into a vehicle and left, and the dog just was abandoned. In other words, it's as if Robert set the dog free or just ditched him, which is weird considering he didn't spare his human family.
Well, and it's weird that he went through all the trouble to save Blue to just leave him.
I almost wonder actually if he didn't want the dog there barking now that something happened to Mary and to their children.
Could be.
And so he knew the dog would be acting different and maybe they'd be found before his explosion could go off.
Could
That's
be.
a good thought.
That is a good theory.
I don't know.
That makes sense.
It seems like because he didn't take the dog beyond, right?
Yeah, that's what it seems weird to me. That if you would go through the trouble to save your dog,
and that's why I don't.
Why
think
would you
he
not
did.
take him?
Just abandon him in the desert.
Yeah.
I think he was just taking him away so he didn't wake up the neighbors at 5 a.m. and
Right.
have them come check why this dog's been barking all night long.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting too, because my dog, I don't hear her till like 7:30.
Yeah, but you're not dead.
But
Well,
if we were sleeping,
Right. But your dog's in a crate all night. So
guess.
my dog isn't. So if there was something wrong, my dog would find me.
That's true.
Whereas your dog wouldn't really know.
She would just be sleeping.
Yeah.
In bed.
Yeah.
So if he was just out and about, he probably would have found them and been, or if he saw
Yeah.
it happen, he probably would have been freaking out.
Even smelling it. I
Yeah.
mean, even if he did have a crate that he spent the night in,
Yeah.
he'd still be smelling something, whether it's the gas or,
Yeah.
you know,
The
Right.
blood.
yeah, I don't know. It sounds like he's a smart
Interesting.
dog, so
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
I mean, cattle dogs usually are.
Mm-hmm. Blue's fate, by the way, because I know I'm invested in the dog at this point, and I think you are too,
Mhm.
was ultimately okay. After being rescued, the dog was treated for those quill injuries and eventually adopted by a new family. So Blue got a second chance at a happy home, something his original family tragically never did. Back to the SUV, inside the 4Runner, police found Robert's Oakland Raiders baseball cap. It was the same cap that he had on in the ATM video. Significantly, the cap had Robert's DNA. Basically, the only confirmed DNA of his found in the vehicle, which is wild. He must have wiped it down. There was no obvious note, no wallet, no phone left behind. Outside the car, they found a pile of human excrement near the passenger door. Yeah, someone took a dump by the car. Perhaps Robert, I don't know, but it does indicate that he was hanging around there a little bit.
Hmm.
Search terms.
Can I say something real quick?
Yes, please.
If it was by a campground, he might have just been hanging out there waiting for someone to come pick him up. It sounds like he maybe got in a car and drove off. I've camped there before in Tonto National Forest, I believe. And there is a lot of like campgrounds and stuff, but maybe he wasn't near. I don't know.
Well, that's what I'm wondering, if maybe he was hanging out there waiting for someone to drive by and he could hitchhike. Hey,
Yeah.
my car's out of gas. Can you give me a ride to the nearest
Mm-hmm.
place so I can call my family or like something like that, especially since it is near a campground. He's expecting that there are going to be people going back and forth.
Yeah.
I wonder if there were cars reported stolen because I could also see him watching cars waiting for someone to just run into, say, an outhouse or something really quick.
Right.
Or go to look at the scenery, whatever.
Do a hike.
And he could take their car.
Yeah.
I wonder, because if it was someone he was hitchhiking with, I feel like they'd question the dog being left there, hopefully.
Maybe they didn't see the dog.
Maybe.
If he walked away, like
Yeah,
if he
that's
parked and then walked off a little bit.
Could have. Although I'd be surprised if the dog didn't follow him.
But if he got in a car and left, maybe the dog went back to the car.
Yeah.
If it wasn't too far off the road.
They had search teams that immediately combed the rugged area around the abandoned Forerunner. The region is rough. There's high desert forest, rocky terrain, caves, mines, ravines. Authorities brought in scent dogs, heat sensing equipment, the whole works. They even started exploring some of the numerous caves in the area, thinking Robert might be hiding like a literal caveman. And when I say numerous, I mean a maze of caves, some stretching for miles underground.
Oh, wow.
Early on, however, the search effort was oddly limited. Reportedly, police only thoroughly checked one or two of the dozens of caves near the car. Why? Possibly resources, possibly because some caves were very treacherous, and partly jurisdiction issues. The location where the car was found was less than a mile from the Fort Apache Indian Reservation. The detective noted that is a sovereign nation that we don't travel onto. So, if Robert slipped into tribal land, he definitely had a head start while law enforcement figured out how to coordinate a search there. They did follow one set of footprints that led towards the reservation, but it petered out with no sign of him. Some speculated Robert might have crawled into one of those caves and either completed suicide or got lost and died inside. It kind of became local lore. Maybe his bones are down in the caves. However, Detective John Kirkham said they found no evidence of a body in the caves they did search. No remains, no disturbed rocks, nothing. Experienced cavers later went through these networks extensively over the years and also found no trace of Robert. Kirkham put it plainly, no one believes Fisher's dead in a cave. We would have found some trace of his body by now. And he added that they saw no signs Robert had tried to alter his appearance or his fingerprints or anything funky like that when they caught a Canada guy. So more on that in a second. The cave theory kind of lost steam. Instead, the evidence, like Blue being left, footprints ending at a road, suggested Robert had escaped that area by hitching a ride, or maybe someone picked him up, some sort of second getaway vehicle. Perhaps he had stashed a cheap motorcycle or had an accomplice meet him. The idea of an accomplice is intriguing. Officially, police say there's no evidence anyone helped him out. But how do you vanish so completely? One theory is he might have hitchhiked out of the forest. Another is that, like we talked about, he walked into the reservation and from there caught a ride somehow, knowing police couldn't easily follow up on sovereign land. By late April 2001, the search of the forest was scaled back without finding Robert. It was like he vanished into thin air. The authorities and the public were flabbergasted. A manhunt that started with helicopters and bloodhounds now moved into its next phase, the waiting game. Would Robert Fisher surface somewhere now that his truck was found? Would he contact anyone? Maybe use a credit card? Nope. Nada. He went absolutely off the grid.
I feel like to just disappear so completely like that, where not even a dog is able to track you, I feel like he had to have gotten into another car.
Mm-hmm. I think so too. So then the question is, did he hitchhike or
did he have an accomplice? Yeah.
Or did he have another car stashed there?
Oh, yeah.
Did the family have another car?
I think he had one, but it was still at the house.
Okay.
They're not looking for a second vehicle that's known to be his. In July 2001, a federal arrest warrant was issued, charging Robert with unlawful flight to avoid prosecution. Basically, the feds making it official that he's a fugitive. Tips were coming in from all over the country from people who thought they saw him here or there. This case made national news. A suburban dad killed his family, blew up his house, and then disappeared. It's kind of true crime legend, or, really horror.
Mm-hmm.
On June 29th, 2002, so now we're 14 plus months after the murders, Robert William Fisher was added to the FBI's 10 most wanted fugitives list. That's the big leagues of infamous criminals, reserved for the worst of the worst or the hardest to catch. The FBI, which loves its fugitive profiles, put out wanted posters describing Robert as armed and extremely dangerous, no kidding, and offering a $100,000 reward for information leading to his capture.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
The poster highlighted his distinguishing features: a surgical scar on his lower back from an old firefighter injury, which makes sense that he would know how to get the fire to blow that much later, by the way.
Yeah.
A gold crown on his upper left tooth. He chews tobacco. He likes Copenhagen brand. There were also notes about how he has this odd habit of walking extremely erect with his chest out, which is due to back pain. In other words, look for a guy who strides like he's auditioning for a military parade and spits Copenhagen juice. FBI also noted that he had ties to Florida and New Mexico, presumably places he'd lived or had family. Robert's face was plastered on FBI wanted posters. Profiled on America's Most Wanted, he made their Dirty Dozen Notorious Fugitives list. He was featured on CNN's The Hunt with John Walsh. He achieved a sort of criminal celebrity status, not that anyone was lining up for autographs. Leads poured in by April 2003, so now 2 years after. The FBI said they had received hundreds and hundreds of leads on Robert's possible whereabouts. People from nearly every region thought they spotted him. Sometimes it was a balding man at a truck stop in Montana, or a guy living off-grid in Colorado, or a drifter in Mexico. Each credible-sounding tip was chased down. Each time, it was a dead end. As one report later put it, all reported sightings of Fisher have either been inconclusive or false. This dude was like a ghost.
I feel like he had to have thought that they wouldn't look for him. Because I can't in my mind think how living on the run in hiding for the rest of your life because of a horrible thing you did is better than just getting a divorce.
I mean, if he fled to another country, then he probably just started over. I just pulled up pictures of him and there's nothing very distinctive,
yeah.
You know?
I thought about that, like if he went to Mexico.
Yeah,
but
Canada.
Yeah, but Mexico, I feel like he would have gone south rather than up north. But
so they did track down a tip in Canada in 2004. They really thought that they had him on that one. A man who looked just like him was arrested in Vancouver. So, I mean, they're looking nationally.
Everywhere.
Mm-hmm. The guy had the same build, the same facial features. He even had a missing tooth where Robert had that gold crown.
Oh, wow.
He also had a back scar similar to Robert's.
Wow.
And they're for sure it's not him.
I mean, so Canadian authorities nabbed him at a Toronto restaurant, and reports differ on the exact locale, but Vancouver and Toronto are both mentioned. For about a week, everyone was holding their breath. Had he been hiding in Canada? But fingerprint analysis showed it was not him.
Oh, crazy.
Wow.
I know. It was a poor Canadian guy that was an unlucky Fisher doppelganger with bad dental work.
Mm-hmm.
He was held for about a week, though, until a relative confirmed his real identity. There was wild speculation that maybe Robert had surgically altered his fingerprints, but Scottsdale Detective Kirkham said nope, the man's prints had no scarring, no alteration. It really just was the wrong guy.
Wow.
Crazy.
Mm-hmm. Then in 2009, a bizarre report came in. A pair of tourists in Guatemala had a hostile run-in with an American man who, after the fact, they thought resembled Robert Fisher. The man apparently got very angry over something minor, like a road rage dispute, and it struck them as weird. By the time they connected the dots to the FBI poster, the guy was long gone. The tip was unconfirmed, but it did fuel speculation that Robert might have fled the country. And it's definitely not far-fetched. April 2001 was before 9/11.
Yeah.
The border security was comparatively lax compared to now.
Yeah.
He could have driven into Mexico easily at that time with minimal documentation.
Especially from Arizona where, we're right on the border.
Mm-hmm.
If he had a 10-hour head start,
Yep.
he could have already been in Mexico by the time they even started tracking him.
Absolutely.
And maybe going north first was to throw him off.
Yeah.
Because if he was in the national forest there's so much for them to search there. And obviously they spent a lot of time searching there if they were searching completely in the wrong direction.
All the caves and everything.
Oh my
and
gosh,
he's in Mexico.
That's so true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did they ever speak to his family in New Mexico?
They did, but they didn't get anything.
Okay, because I was thinking he could have gone up to New Mexico, gotten money or cards or whatever he needed, and then gone down. But
He could have, and
Yeah,
they could
possible.
be covering for him.
Yeah. I
He's
mean,
still
or
their
just straight
family.
south.
maybe they didn't know what happened or
Yeah.
when he was there, right? And
Yeah.
then
and found
they
out
found
later.
Right.
He got, if he was able to hitchhike there,
Yeah.
get some money in a car, tell him, make up some story.
yeah, and then drive south.
Yeah.
Yeah, he could have gone through Mexico, gone all the way down to Central America. Guatemala's not too much of a stretch.
And to leave his car in a place with hundreds of places to thoroughly search.
Yeah.
And
That makes
waste
the most
all that
sense to me.
time.
Yeah.
The helicopters and the dogs.
Yep. Instead of checking borders and
Yeah.
different, checkpoints
Well,
to Mexico.
especially giving himself essentially a 10-hour head start from where he was at. If he's heading north, he could have been, Salt Lake City, about 10 hours, or south, that's way down into Mexico.
Yeah.
So he had a huge head start on them.
And that was 10 hours before the fire.
Yes.
And they thought he was in there. I mean, he
Exactly.
had days, Yeah.
So at least
At
a
least
10-hour head start.
10 hours. Right.
Well, and the other thing too with where he left his car is right there with the reservation.
Mm-hmm.
So they were coordinating searching there too. That's a
Right.
lot of time spent in those areas when he could have dropped it there on purpose to have them waste time looking there.
It's also heavily, there's a lot more trees up there.
Yeah.
So looking with the helicopter is not as effective. You would
No.
need people on the ground. If he had driven south and left his car in the desert, I feel like you could search that a lot quicker with the helicopter.
Yeah, for sure.
I would think that his experience in firefighting, which with law enforcement, he had some planning or things like that, like doing it where there are trees compared to the desert where there's nothing.
Well, he also loves to hunt and fish too. So he would have been
Yeah.
at least more familiar with.
Oh, I'm sure he
area.
spent a lot of time
Yeah.
in that national forest.
Oh, he could have been stashing money up there.
Every time he went up. Yeah.
Maybe even he knew of a cabin or something.
Oh, yeah. That's true. So many possibilities.
Yep.
He could have gotten a car and stashed it somewhere up there.
Like had
Prior.
stolen it way
Yeah.
before. That's true too. Wow.
I mean, we don't know what happened. If he had gone up there with his family, maybe they took
Right.
2 cars and then he said one died or, something.
Well, we don't know how long he was planning this for either.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, if it was spur of the moment, then, that probably he might not have had a car waiting for him. But if this was something he had
Thought
planned
about.
for, yeah.
Or if he had gone up with a friend and told him he was going to leave his car up there.
Yeah.
Some new, whatever car he had gotten. But
Yeah.
I don't
Could
know.
have been a
There's a lot of
thoughts
there.
there car or something.
Mhm.
To be clear, there's no hard evidence that Robert ever left the U.S., but the FBI has considered the international escape a reasonable possibility, especially early on. In 2014, police were acting on a tip in Colorado. Police spot raided a house in Commerce City, Colorado, thinking Robert might be hiding there. They arrested 2 people in the house, unrelated warrants, but found 0 sign of Fisher, which was kind of felt like just another wild goose chase. Mm-hmm. There were also more homegrown sightings in the years right after his disappearance. Some of Robert's old Scottsdale neighbors swore they occasionally saw a familiar-looking man driving in the neighborhood, as if Robert was playing Phantom of the Opera in a baseball cap, revisiting the scene. Nothing came of those reports either, except it did freak out all of his neighbors.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So, how has Robert Fisher managed to evade capture for so long, assuming he's alive? Investigators and psychologists have some thoughts. First, Robert was an outdoorsman and a hunter. He wasn't, some city slicker who'd be lost without Wi-Fi. We're talking about a guy who, as an adult, took off into the woods for days to hunt elk, who could gut a deer and live off the land if needed. That definitely gave him an edge in surviving on the run, at least initially. Some wondered if he literally vanished in the wilderness and lived as mountain man. But survival experts and police are skeptical that he could survive that long out there with no support. Finding food and shelter in those Arizona mountains long term is extremely difficult. And no trace of any hermit Fisher was ever found. So our wilderness theory doesn't hold too much water, or canned beans, as it were. What's more likely is that Robert prepared for this. This whole crime feels premeditated, at least from the moment he realized Mary might actually leave him. He had time to scheme. He drained the home's gas, staged the candle, withdrew cash, chose a remote area to ditch the car. It wasn't a spur-of-the-moment snap. It was an exit plan. Some profilers think he may have even had fake identity documents ready or stashed supplies somewhere, like we mentioned.
Yeah.
An acquaintance of his, Lori, reported that her husband went camping with Robert in the exact forest area very shortly before the murders. And he now believes Robert was scouting locations in advance.
That would be so terrible to look back and think that.
100%.
But yeah, there's no way he could have known.
No.
Yeah.
No, of course
But you
not.
would still think, oh, what if
in
I would've?
hindsight,
did I miss something?
Add to the premeditated of it all.
Yeah.
Let's not overlook Robert's personality. According to FBI agent Bob Caldwell, Robert is arrogant. He's cocky. He's a know-it-all, and he's a loner. He's exactly the kind of guy who would smugly think he can outsmart everyone and survive on his own. Caldwell and others have also pointed out that Robert likely wouldn't kill himself. He's too into himself. All our evidence has been that he's the kind of guy who wouldn't kill himself. He's out there fishing and hunting and chewing tobacco with a sore back, Caldwell said in 2011. That vivid description really paints a picture. Robert roughing it outdoors, chomping his Copenhagens, maybe complaining about his old back injury, but still too stubborn to surrender. We can't forget the divorce trauma, which is a huge psychological driver here. A forensic psychologist, Dr. Tess Neal, commented that if Robert saw the end of his marriage coming, he might have truly believed that he was saving his kids from the pain of divorce by murdering them, as twisted and awful as that sounds. She said he did not want his children to have to live through the kind of divorce-related trauma that he himself had experienced. In his warped, sick mind, maybe this was some form of mercy or a way to keep the family together forever. Yeah, gross. It's just awful.
I don't like that.
I don't either.
It does kind of sound like that may have been what it was since they were sleeping. It's not like it was like the wife. It was,
right. As the years passed, law enforcement remained divided on Fisher's fate. Many of the investigators closest to the case firmly believe he's alive and out there. They kept him on the FBI's top 10 list for almost 20 years.
Oh, wow.
Which, frankly, the FBI doesn't do if they think the guy is probably dead. Henselman noted in 2021 that they still received weekly tips, sometimes even daily.
Wow.
He said different detectives have different theories, but they continue to keep the investigation open and look into every tip that comes their way. Some cops lean towards completing suicide in the woods, given the stress he was under, but most point to evidence like the dog and the preparation as a sign he planned to survive. A journalist who worked the case deeply found that out of about 30 people who knew Fisher or worked the case, the majority of them, 20, believe Robert is still alive. Only 7 thought he was likely dead, and 3 couldn't decide. So, at least 2/3 of those who knew him best say he's probably still out there, perhaps living for that arrogance and the thrill of getting away with it. If he's alive, where would he be? A couple of the popular theories: he could be living in a small town where he gets paid cash, works as a handyman, or he could be in a big city and blend in. Think about it. Plenty of people work off the books, pay rent in cash, and don't attract attention. Fisher was only 40 when he fled, so conceivably, he could start over and be Bob from down the street, a quiet middle-aged guy who doesn't talk about his past. Maybe he grew a beard. Maybe he ditched the tobacco and learned some Spanish. Maybe he went to Mexico. One creepy thought, police have speculated that he might even have started a new family somewhere and could one day snap and do the same thing to them as he did in 2001.
That would be so sad.
Mm-hmm.
Like thinking about one of the other cases we were doing, her family didn't know about her past till she was dying.
Till
she was
88.
88.
Yep.
If he ran off and found someone new in some quiet town somewhere.
Yeah, the murder of Nancy. I mean, his son had no idea. He obviously, if you remember, he wasn't surprised, but
yeah,
he didn't know.
Right. I mean, this guy could be living in some remote town out in Maine somewhere, where that's not.
Maybe he is living in Arizona and his neighbors really do see him driving around.
Maybe.
No.
He's gone. He does not live in Scottsdale or Arizona or Payson or Tonto or.
Yes.
No, but maybe he's out on the East Coast in some little tiny village where
Especially if he
town.
Fishes. Maybe he runs a fishing boat company, something.
He could have a new family out there.
And so, just in case, we will attach a picture of him to this.
Yes.
When did they take him off the most wanted list?
Right around 2021.
Okay.
I don't know why they chose to take him off, but it was a really long time for him to be on there.
Maybe they just wanted to add room for
other awful,
more
people.
recent people. Yeah.
Detectives warn that he could just be drifting around the country, never staying in one place long. There's this serial killer, Whitney Bulger, who evaded capture for 16 years by moving apartments in states. Fisher could be doing a low-rent version of that. No digital footprint, no friendships, just a loner. And, chances of some random encounter, a traffic stop, a hospital visit could eventually expose him, but so far nothing. We talked about him crossing into Mexico or even further south, Latin America. He's outdoorsy. He could be working on a ranch or in a fishing community. This isn't D.B. Cooper jumping out of a plane level mystery. A determined person can slip into another country, especially pre-9/11, and vanish.
Mm-hmm.
There were the alleged sightings. There was another one in the early 2000s at a B&B, not an Airbnb, but a bread and breakfast.
A bread and breakfast.
A bread and breakfast. A bed and breakfast in Mexico.
I would go to a bread and breakfast.
It does sound nice, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That does sound nice.
Yeah.
I love breakfast.
And bread.
And bread.
Mm-hmm.
All the carbs.
Maybe they just make different bread breakfasts, like French toast with the side of toast.
Croissants
great,
filled
too.
with chocolate.
All right. We have a future career here, ladies.
Yes.
Yep. Trademark that. Through the 2000s and the 2010s, the Fisher case periodically made the news, especially on anniversaries. In 2011, a documentary titled Where's Robert Fisher was released, featuring interviews with his sister and some of the detectives. Spoiler, it didn't find him, but it did keep public interest alive. In 2016, on the 15th anniversary of the murders, the FBI and Scottsdale PD held a news conference and released age-progressed photos showing what Robert might look like in his mid-50s. Those images imagined him balding or with gray hair, maybe a goatee, basically an older version of his average Joe face. You have to remember everybody is 20 years older. The detective reminded folks in 2021, we're not looking for a 40-year-old person anymore. We're looking for a 60-year-old person. And now in 2025, Robert Fisher would be 64 years old. He might look like a nice grandpa who happens to have a past out of a horror film. And, I was just thinking, I lived here when they did that 15th anniversary. I didn't see it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we've lived here for
a long
10 plus years and I had never heard of it.
Yep. I had heard of it, but I don't remember seeing coverage, and I don't think I heard about it then. I think I heard about it more recently.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. Now I have to go look at every fugitive in my city.
Yes.
Yes.
Hey, that's why we're doing this.
That's right.
Yep.
We all live here and we never heard of it.
Mm-hmm. And wherever he lives, maybe they've never heard of it.
Maybe not.
All right. Well, here we are 2 decades later. We're left with a haunting question. Where is Robert Fisher? Is he, sipping beer on a porch under assumed name? Happy he got away with this? Or did he die in a cave? Maybe the final victim of his own violence? The theories abound and answers are elusive. But what we do know is Robert William Fisher massacred his wife, Mary, and their kids, Brittney, 12, and Bobby, 10, in the most brutal way imaginable. He blew up their home, which held all of their memories, likely to cover his tracks and buy him time. This wasn't a split-second rage. It was a deliberate, cold execution and escape, and he left behind a trail of trauma. Mary and Robert's extended families were devastated. Imagine being Mary's relatives who lost 3 loved ones and then learned their son-in-law did it and vanished. Robert's own family was horrified too. His sister, who initially defended him, had to face the reality of what he had done. She said, "My brother loved his wife and his kids. I trusted my brother with my life. There's no way I would have thought he could have been capable of this." And that was a quote from his sister. They also have no closure. For all they know, their brother's alive and out there, or maybe his bones just haven't been found. Mary Fisher and her children aren't just names in Robert's story. They're real people whose lives were cut short. Mary reportedly, like we said, was considering starting anew, maybe going back to school or moving closer to her family. Brittney was Daddy's girl who had recently been elected captain of her sports team at school. Bobby was in Cub Scouts and loved animals. These are the voices that we never get to hear because Robert silenced them. In our rightful fascination with the mystery of Robert Fisher, we do have to remember the cost of that mystery. If Robert's out there, he's had to live in hiding for 24 years, which is a long time to be looking over your shoulder. He hasn't been able to have contact with old friends, unless he really is stupid. Always fearing that a routine traffic stop or a curious neighbor could unravel his life. Crazy to think that he could just be out there living life like it didn't happen. For years, Scottsdale police kept a mock-up of an older Robert Fisher's face on the wall to remind them the case is active and that time changes appearances. The FBI famously noted how average Robert looks. He is not super tall. He's not super short. He doesn't really have tattoos, nothing immediately shocking except maybe that stiff gait and that back gold tooth. As one detective put it, we're looking for a guy who looks like a lot of guys. That's what makes this search a needle in a haystack.
Yeah.
In the end, we're left with this crime, and it's the kind of case that keeps both law enforcement and detectives, FBI, everyone, even us, up at night because we all want to see the last chapter. We want to see him caught or identified, and until that day comes, Robert Fisher remains an enigma. A man who wanted control so badly he'd rather destroy his family than lose them, and who may have succeeded in disappearing without a trace. Let's end with a thought experiment. It's a regular morning at a small town diner somewhere in North America. An older man is sitting at the counter sipping coffee. He's polite, he keeps to himself. Maybe he works odd jobs and goes by Gary now. He has a faded scar on his back and a slight slouch these days. Time catches up to all of us, even ex-firefighters. The waitress tops up his mug. "More coffee, hun?" He nods and thanks her in a quiet voice. On the TV above the counter, there's a news brief about a 20-plus-year-old cold case in Arizona. The man stiffens ever so slightly when a picture of a younger him flashes on the screen. Robert Fisher, still wanted after all these years. He quietly pays his bill, leaves a decent tip, and walks out before anyone notices the resemblance. Back on the road, back into obscurity he goes, heart pounding just a little. Is that scenario real? Who knows? But someone somewhere likely does. And if you're out there, Robert, if by some twist you hear this, know that nobody has forgotten. Not the families you destroyed, not the detectives who have spent their careers chasing your ghost, and not us. They're all still looking for you. Keep your eyes open. What do you guys think?
Laura, we started this saying didn't know how we're going to feel about a case in Arizona. Thoughts?
I don't know. I don't like that they didn't catch him.
Yeah.
I also feel like it wasn't, some of the cases that we talk about are those random cases that are more frightening. This definitely is more personal, more, really horrifying.
Yes.
Yeah.
So sad and tragic.
Yeah.
I wish that they had found him.
It's so crazy to think that happened probably not far from here.
Yeah. I'm avoiding finding out how far.
Interesting to think about all the possibilities of where he could have gone, what could have happened to him.
Mm-hmm.
There's really no closure there.
With how much of a head start he would have had.
He could
really
be anywhere.
Anywhere. Yeah.
Just how horrible for her family.
His family too.
And his family and all their friends, everyone that knew him, and Mary.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Just so tragic that his bad experience destroyed his family.
Yeah,
Literally.
Literally. Yeah.
And like we said, if you had a bad experience, be the change. Don't take away someone else's life because of your bad experience.
Yeah, because of your trauma that you haven't figured out yet.
Yes. And if you have that trauma, get help.
Yeah, they should have.
Awful.
I was hoping that they would have done counseling before he cheated or before, they
had
started
kids,
yelling or something.
Yeah. Just awful.
It is. It's really sad. But maybe, just maybe, someone somewhere has seen him.
Maybe
one of those tips will actually pan out and lead to some justice for their families.
I hope so.
Or if not,
or prevent it from happening.
And he's gone. Hope that they find him and can give their families some closure that he's not out there potentially going to do this to somebody else.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Well, thank you so much for listening. If you want to see a picture of him, go check out our blog. You can find it linked to our website, which is crimeclueless.com under the contributors section. Go take a look. See if he looks like anybody you know or anybody you've seen. If you would be so kind, we'd love if you would follow us on social media. We're on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok. Just search for @Crime Clueless. If you have any theories, feedback, we'd love to hear it either there or send us an email, crimeclueless@gmail.com. If you enjoyed today's episode, we'd love if you take a moment to rate, review, and share our podcast. Your support just means the world to us. And, maybe sharing it, you share it with the right person who has seen Robert Fisher.
Yeah.
You can find Crime Clueless on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, and all major streaming platforms. Thank you again. We truly appreciate you. And remember, refuse to be clueless, careless, or caught off guard.
Not today, murderers.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.